This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Hosted by Katie Milkman, an award-winning behavioral scientist and author of the best-selling book, How to Change, Choiceology is a show about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Hear true stories from Nobel laureates, authors, athletes, and everyday people about why we do the things we do. Listen to Choiceology at schwab.com/podcast or wherever you listen.
My dominant takeaway from this experience was that I was never given a chance.
I see.
It feels like at a certain point, they just decided I wasn't a good investment and cut their losses and didn't tell me. So I feel like all these people who were around me who were saying they were supporting me were in fact biding their time until I would make the decision for them.
Welcome to How To. I'm Carvell Wallace. Some of you may know that long before I started writing, long before I started podcasting, I worked in nonprofit. For 15 years, in fact. I dealt with clients in underserved communities, kids in detention facilities, kids in foster care. It was hard work, but not for the reasons you think. Working with clients was sometimes challenging, but almost always manageable. The real difficulty was usually the agency I was working for, the executives and the funders and the stress of metrics and bad training, disrespectful supervisors and impossible outcomes. Working with people in your community was rewarding, but doing it for a business was less so. And I'm not the only person who feels that way. Service professions like social work and healthcare have higher turnover than some other sectors. And the people who struggle in those fields often have a hard time knowing, is it me or is it the job? And once you do leave, you might find yourself worrying, will the next position just be more of the same? Well, that's the situation for this week's listener.
Hi, my name is Elle. I was a lawyer for about 13 years for the Social Security Administration. And then I got my MSW, my Master's of Social Work, and started working as a therapist last year.
So what drew you to get an MSW and to move into social work?
So I've always been interested in sort of public service kind of jobs. That was what prompted me to get my law degree. And then once I was in that world, like I said, I was a federal employee for more than a decade, I realized how futile it is to make a difference. And I just felt like I wasn't doing the work I wanted to be doing as far as helping people systemically or individually. I had always had in the back of my mind, I've had a lot of therapy, and I was always had in the back of my mind that was something I might be able to do.
The idea seemed perfect for Elle. She could get a master's in social work and help people one-on-one in a way that would have more impact. And friends told her that with the degree, she'd be able to find work easily and make a decent living in private practice. And at first, it seemed they were right. Elle found employment at a group therapy practice and was excited to get started. But it was not long before things began to feel off.
For a while, I thought there was something wrong with me because I just wasn't happy. I would get really stressed when clients would decide to leave, which happened to me quite a bit in the first few months, just because I was feeling my way. I didn't know how to be a therapist. Nobody really taught me that, so I was just kind of figuring out how to connect to people. And when you've only had 2 or 3 sessions with someone, it's very easy for them to say, I'm going to find somebody else. So
Right.
That was happening a lot, though, and I got progressively more depressed. About 2 months after I started, I wound up going into an intensive outpatient program for depression. I was out of work entirely for about 3 weeks, and I never really bounced back. I lost about half my clients. So it got very stressful. It got very difficult to cope with. And as much as I tried not to feel like it was a personal rejection or failure, the support at this place was not great as far as like helping me find solutions or helping me take what I could from these relationships and apply it to the next one. So
Gotcha. Because it was a group practice, I'm assuming there was no like HR, there was no like professional development stuff available to you after you started this position. that was sort of sponsored through the organization. Is that correct?
I had a clinical supervisor who was a licensed clinical social worker and was also the clinical director of the practice. He gave solid supervision. We did a lot of role play and a lot of working through how different conversations could go. So that was very helpful. And I gained a lot of confidence working with him. But he also had some interesting philosophies about what supervision could and should be. And one of them was that he didn't believe in reassurance. He would tell you something positive once. And if you needed more than that, you had to get it from yourself.
I see.
It was really difficult for somebody who was kind of struggling with their professional identity to feel secure in that environment. I also think that the particular place I was, there was a lot of therapist turnover there. So I'm trying to accept that this was actually not in my control. It was really toxic in a way that made me feel like all my problems were kind of in my head or my fault. So I got to a point with my mental health that I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I quit my job a couple of months ago now. And I've just been kind of adrift, trying to figure out how not to fall into the same trap. I wanted some reinforcement in this idea that there can be healthy workplaces. There can be good emotional balance, which is so important in this field within a helping profession.
Yeah. So, Rudhir, does this story sound familiar to you at all?
It's certainly familiar. I just really appreciate all the background. I really appreciate Elle hearing about all of the various challenges. And I certainly hear people going into workplaces, engaging in an environment that's not the right fit, and really wondering and second guessing. So you are certainly not alone.
This is our expert this week, Rudhir Krishtel. He's a leadership coach who advises companies large and small on how to bring more humanity to the workplace, which means he spends as much time thinking about what's happening inside the person as he does thinking about what's happening inside the company. And today, he's going to show us how to figure out what you need from your job and how to make it work for you and for everyone else in your workplace. Stay with us. This episode is brought to you by Defender. For those who embrace the impossible, the Defender 110 is up for the adventure. This iconic vehicle has been redefined with a thoroughly modern design. The exterior is reimagined with compelling proportions and precise detail, and the interior is built with robust materials and integrity. The Defender capability is legendary, whether you're facing off-road challenges or harsh weather conditions. Built for the modern explorer, the Defender 110 lets you go further and do more, and cargo capacity means more room for your gear. To drive the Defender is to explore with greater confidence. Powerful innovations like the intuitive driver display and award-winning infotainment system keep you connected. Innovative camera technologies deliver unobstructed views and effortless maneuvering. Ready for a wide range of adventures, the Defender family features the two-door Defender 90, the Defender 110, and the Defender 130, which seats up to 8. A vehicle made to go further, the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA/Defender.
You know that's the sound of another sale on your online Shopify store. But did you know Shopify powers selling in person too? That's right. Shopify is the sound of selling everywhere, online, in store, on social media, and beyond. One thing I've always dreamed about is being able to sell my art online. And Shopify has simple tools to help me set up and start selling my creations. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/howto. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/howto to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/howto.
Hey, How To listeners. We're working on an episode about being better prepared for emergency situations. And we're looking for a listener who's willing to share their experience and receive advice from an expert about reacting to a disaster. This is a really important one, so if this is you, please email us at howto@slate.com or call the How To hotline at 646-495-4001.
Rudhir Krishtel didn't start out thinking about the feelings of people in the office. Like Elle, he began his career in law.
And I noticed a couple of things. Lawyers are trained to be amazing in court. And as a corporate attorney and working at a company, we're amazing negotiating deals at a table. And yet, when it came to having the difficult conversations with a colleague, having a dialogue about what's difficult, engaging in the challenges and having a real meaningful dialogue about the challenges that Elle faces and that many people face in the workplace, we were tongue-tied. And so amazing in a courtroom, amazing across the table, and yet avoiding meaningful conversations with colleagues about stress, about well-being, about how people feel and how they belong at work, and even on your own leadership. And so noticing that people are amazing in one aspect of communication, but then not with each other and how to evolve and make better teams, I transitioned into wanting to support people in that work.
I think it's fairly common in group practices, at least in my area, to feel pretty isolated just because everyone's on a different schedule. Even if you're working right next door to a person, you might not see them more than in passing the whole day. And I think that's something that I really missed coming out of even COVID isolation. I still was in contact with my coworkers every day. That's something I realized was really important to me. Another big thing for me is transparency from the top down, because I feel like the place I was really bad at letting us know what the high level discussions were before decisions had been made, and that affected all of us. And it led to people feeling really insecure and really like they had to rush into big decisions affecting their financial lives.
I'm curious, Elle, what felt toxic? Because you used that word earlier, and I'm just curious. It's really helpful to hear and understand that, because clearly it wasn't the right fit for your needs. And it's helpful to understand and get a sense. What was the part that was really challenging, or who were the humans? And we'd have to name individuals, but what was the hard part about the people or the environment for you?
Wow. Yeah. That word toxic gets thrown around a lot these days. And I do hesitate to use it because it might just be that it wasn't the right place for me. But to me, it felt like I was drowning and nobody was really interested.
I guess what I'm trying to sort out here is, I'm wondering if you have a sense on what has to do with limited capacity in terms of the way the organization works, or what is it that's sort of like these people just don't know how to run a caring shop for their employees?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. And obviously, just because they're in a caring profession doesn't mean they're responsible for knowing everything that goes on in their employees' personal lives. And I get that. But at the same time, like, I do think that there's a lack of care for emotional and even physical safety in some sense that was happening in this organization.
Could you say more about what you mean by that?
I was put in a situation where I should have been warned that someone I was going to be speaking to might pose a threat, and I wasn't.
Right.
And I brought it up to my supervisor, and they acknowledged that they should have let me know and apologized, but it felt like they didn't really understand why that was an issue.
I see. This conversation really has two sides to it, right? It's like sort of, what do you do as an employer to make sure that your employees don't have the experience that Elle is describing? And then on the other side, there's, what do you do as an employee to kind of prevent yourself or protect yourself from the kinds of things that Elle is describing? But I want to start with the employer point of view. Imagine that I'm listening to this podcast and I'm going, well, I do think of us as a team. We have, fun Fridays, and we have a softball league, and I brought in brownies the other day, you know what I mean? And people are still complaining, like, How specifically does one operationalize this idea of bringing more mindfulness into the way that I deal with my team?
I wish it was one size fits all, but this isn't tips and tricks, and it's not top 5 ways. That just doesn't work. If we stick with Elle's situation and scenario, if you're thinking about the organization, there's a gap in leadership. It's clear. The person that was offering Elle skills and supervision, they set boundaries and walls in how they did it. And Elle needs a certain level of affirmation and understanding. But when a leader understands that and sees that and gets a sense that different people on my team have different needs, they adapt, they adjust, and they meet that need. And again, I don't know what's in their mind and what their experience is and how successful they are, but it seems like there's issues with attrition. It seems like there's issues with turnover. And what we want then is getting curious about what's the leadership training that the people at the top have. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? How are they trying to retain their talent and invest and support in them? Oftentimes the bottleneck is at the top. And we really want to look at leadership. We really want to take a look at people that are managing and gathering this team, because the leaders are trying to accomplish something, but they're trying to gather a team and bring them along too. And both have to happen. Management is hard, and balancing those two can be quite challenging. And so I'm really curious about how they're training, what they're doing, and how they're inviting their leaders to take their business to the next level.
What Rudhir is talking about is the difference between the practice skill and the leadership skill. And we're going to return to that a few times in this talk. Oftentimes, we believe that to be good at our job is, understandably, to be good at the job, at the thing the company or the department does. But in actuality, leadership is a whole different skill set, one that requires understanding the different needs of different employees and adapting accordingly.
This is often the case. When you have high-performing professionals, clinicians, therapists, as an example, what they end up training on is the skill set that they are offering. What they often then miss is how to lead a team. What ends up being missed then is that one individual and their service providing skill set, and how they end up leading a team and how effective they are at doing that. And it's just two different things. Just because you're good at the thing that you do doesn't mean that you're good at coaching, training, and supporting other people in doing that same thing. And that's what I'm talking about, is they might have had incredible clinicians, but are they able to create a team that Elle was looking for? Are they able to create an environment? Are they able to support people in their growth? It's two different things, two different skill sets. And what got you here won't get you there. And so even though people at the top may have been offering an incredible service and great clinicians themselves, they might not be able to impart, share, and lead others in doing the same thing as a group.
What are some of the skills that are necessary to be a good leader? I imagine that some of these things would sort of be true regardless of sector.
Certainly. I think there are many things that we want that have a lot of value. First, it's just being clear on what Elle's task is and her charge. I also think a leadership skill that is valuable across the board is the ability to have a difficult conversation or give meaningful feedback. It's clear Elle was looking for training and support, but was she really getting it? Was she getting that meaningful feedback and support to help improve in the skill set? Another thing is just vision, knowing where we're going and what this thing is going to look like down the road. Elle probably had a vision, and I'm curious about that, about what her career is going to look like here, but they have to have some idea too and offer that out. And so a lot of leadership skills, but certainly being able to be a bit more of a visionary, being able to offer that clear feedback.
Well, that does raise the question then about Elle's future growth. And I want to kind of switch the point of view from the employer to the employee. Elle, describe to me your ideal job as you understand it now. Not only the environment, but what kind of work, what kind of coworkers, what kind of support. I know we've talked a little bit about this before, but would you mind going a little deeper into that?
Sure. I think for me, it needs to really feel like a team, like Rudhir was talking about. It needs to feel like we all have our individual charges, but we're all invested in the health of the client as a group as well. It has to feel like people want to help each other. People want to share the load. The expertise that can come from people on the same professional level, that just like, this clinician is really good with crisis management, or this clinician is really good with queer folks or trans folks, and who to go to when you have those questions. And that's part of the way the organization is structured and managed. So it can't just be like here's you at the bottom, and here's your immediate supervisor, and you go to them, and then they go to the next person above them. And, it needs to be more linear where everyone's kind of asking everyone else for the feedback in their specific areas. Because then everybody develops expertise everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. The word that comes to mind as I listen to you talk, Elle, is collective.
Yes.
Almost that you're looking for something more of a collective than kind of a vertical top-down agency. I wonder, Rudhir, like there's this thing of managing up, right? There's this thing of like knowing what you need and then being able to communicate that to your supervisors, to the people who are supposed to be ideally providing it to you. How does a person know when it's time to do more of that and when it's time to say, this is as far as this can go, it's time for me to look elsewhere? What sort of signs do we look for?
The biggest sign is being able to search inside yourself. I think really knowing your own limits. Elle, I'd love to know more about what's ideal. What are the workplaces that you've actually enjoyed? What are the moments at work that you felt like the best version of yourself? And when we do that, what we end up learning and reinvestigating are your values. What do you actually care about? Which are the values that you want in a workplace embodied? Which are the ones that you're willing to maybe compromise on? And just getting a clear sense of that first. It's clear that team matters to you. It's clear that physical workplace matters to you. It's clear that the environment matters to you. And I think on the front end, this job may not have even offered that. Really knowing this is the type of workplace relationship that I know that I want because of who I am and what makes me thrive and what gives me energy. And so having a clear understanding of that, and it evolves over time, but I think that's the first step, Carvell, is just knowing that here's what I love and here's what I want.
What I love about what Rudhir is doing here is he's kind of skipping over the question of, is it my workplace that sucks or is it me? And instead, he's encouraging Elle and maybe you to ask a different set of questions. What do I actually want? Is this a fit? What would be the ideal fit for me based on who I actually am, not how I think I should be?
Now the radar goes off, the notifications go off, and Elle ends up doing what you're doing right now, which is starting to look around and see, are there other environments that are better? Are there places that I should go? And I wanted to let you know, certainly there are places to work where our team is valued. Certainly there are workplaces with a physical space where people step into. Certainly there are teams that invest in their team members, and you looking for that has a lot of value. Part of this practice, part of what you're noticing is maybe there was an early compromise on your values. Maybe you know what you want inside, and early on, this workplace wasn't the right place. Not listening to the signs, we end up staying longer. And so we first want to just get shored up about what I really want, what I love, where I thrive. And then we want to look at this workplace and say, is this the right environment for me? On the front end, we do that litmus test. When you interview, they're interviewing you, you interview them also. You get a feel for the space and you start realizing this is right. But if it's not passing that sniff test, you know it's time to move on to the next opportunity and cast a wider net on your search. Carvell, the same thing happens when you stay at a workplace long enough and it stops honoring your values. It's actually not the right place. We also want to pay attention to ourselves. We don't want to get subject to ourselves to abuse in any way, physical, mental, emotional, social, whatever it might be. And so you want to be mindful of that. But before that, we certainly want to read the signs.
Yeah. Well, I really love that question that you pose about what are the moments, Elle, in your work that you loved, that you felt inspired and ignited. Do you have memories like that in this position?
In any position, by the way, I want to widen the scope. In life, when are the moments that you felt like the best version of yourself? I feel like you have a sense of that, and we'd love to hear that.
Okay. It's small moments, and it's really connecting with clients mostly in this job. It's sitting back in a session or after a session's over and making my notes and realizing there was a team in this room that did something remarkable. And maybe it was just for that day. But maybe the client comes back the next week and says, I was really thinking about that thing you said, and it jarred this and that, and I want to talk about it. Those were the kind of things where I thought, I can do this. I actually can inspire people to examine things that they weren't examining before.
What about in past jobs? In prior work environments, what was the thing? And it doesn't be the environment. It could just be any moment that you felt like I got to be the best version of myself or a good version of myself.
When I could solve a tricky problem as a lawyer, when I could effectively argue a given position on a set of facts that seemed less than ideal or not suited to that argument, when I got to be creative. Creativity is a big one for me.
Yeah, creativity. So we can hear you light up a little bit on the creativity. And so 2 things clearly matter to you. 3 things: team, affirmation, and creativity. Team, affirmation, and creativity. Tell me what it would be like to be on an amazing team. What would that feel like for you? If you were on a team of people that were co-supportive and you were being invested in and people were really supporting you on your career trajectory, what would that feel like for you? I'm curious.
I would feel known. I would feel like everyone on that team saw my strengths, knows where I can grow, and wants to support me in all of that. So like, they come to me with problems that they know I can help with, and they come to me with things that they know I'm not as comfortable with, just to get
There
feedback.
you go.
Because that's how you grow
Yeah.
confidence, right? That's how you gain in confidence, is by trusting your judgment in situations where you don't have a lot of experience.
That's right.
And then you build. So that would be ideal, I think. I wanted to talk a little more about my legal career, because that was so frustrating in so many ways, and I struggled in it for a long, long time. But there were days that were amazing, and it was because on those days I felt like I had helped someone and they were maybe not a member of the public. I had found something, I had identified something, I had analyzed something in a way that made it make sense to them in a way they hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about therapy too, was that I could bring my insights and my experiences and just tweak the way a client was looking at something. And they would go, oh, yeah, I can see that. Or they would go, no, that's really off base. That's not how I think about it at all. But we could have that dialogue.
This is why I think you're heading down the right direction career-wise, and yet there's more. You're able to help people personally, and that's what really lifted your heart. In the morass of the legal career, the days that were a shining light were the ones where you got to help an individual, which is amazing because, again, going down towards our dreams and what we want, everything is going to be difficult. Everything is difficult for everybody. And yet this is the difficulty that you choose. I want to help people and I'm going to figure this thing out. Part of what you're looking for on top of being able to help individuals is a team around you. And Carvell, you heard it. It's not just a team. It's a place where I feel known.
Yeah.
That's different, right? And that's what you're looking for. Those are the questions that you ask now when you interview at the next place. I want to meet a few people. I want to get a sense of the environment. And then when you check in with people, you can ask open-ended questions. You know, you're a lawyer, you know how to do this. You ask the open-ended questions and you get a sense and you trust your intuition that, oh, these people feel known in their workplace. The other thing that you're looking for is a place that offers affirmation. That's not everywhere, but it does exist in the world. And so how would it feel if you were in an environment where the mentor was supporting you, offering you clear direction, and affirming you more than the last person? What would that get you? And how would that make you feel?
It would get me to a place where I could do it for myself. That sense of competence for myself. I can start to make those decisions.
And so I'm looking for a place that invests in my autonomy. They're invested in autonomy, right?
Yes.
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 How does it
Autonomy
feel
is
if you
huge.
had a place that was invested in your autonomy? What would that feel like for you?
Then I would feel supported because I would feel respected. Like my judgment was respected.
And how would it feel to be in an environment where your judgment was respected and you were supported?
Like I was valued.
Right. And now you can see that you're happier. So you have, just by listening to yourself, you're getting a better sense of what you're really looking for. And when you attune that pitchfork inside, you attune that sensor inside towards the things that you want, that's when we make those opportunities more possible.
As corny as it sounds, it really is all about listening to yourself. I'm sorry, but it is. And knowing what works for you and what doesn't. About investigating what is hard for you and what it would be like if you were in an environment that didn't have those challenges. About, as Rudhir says, tuning that pitchfork to the right frequency so you can see and maybe even feel and sense when something is the right fit and when it isn't. When we come back, Elle is going to try and figure out what her future might look like. Stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Choiceology is a show all about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Each episode shares the latest research in behavioral science and dives into themes like, can we learn to make smarter decisions, and the power of do-overs. The show is hosted by Katie Milkman. She's an award-winning behavioral scientist, professor at the Wharton School, and author of the best-selling book, How to Change. In each episode, Katie talks to authors, historians, athletes, Nobel laureates, and everyday people about why we make irrational choices and how we can make better ones to avoid costly mistakes. Listen and subscribe at schwab.com/podcast or find it wherever you listen.
When you hear a good idea, it's natural to do a double take. That's what you might do when you hear Discover will automatically double the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. Wait, what? Yep, double the cash back is something so good you might do a triple take. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This episode is brought to you by SAP. First, the bad news. SAP Business AI won't help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos, but it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, and automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations, so you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI. We're back with our listener, Elle, and our expert, Rudhir Krishtel, who is helping Elle figure out where she goes from here.
We don't want you to lose sight of yourself and your needs.
Mm-hmm.
You are not alone. Anybody who's a service professional would just jump hurdles to solve problems for other people. But then we lose sight of our own needs. And that's where we want you to invest in part.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take even a greater investment in that as you move forward in this path, it's going to serve you in significant ways and pay huge dividends.
How's that landing for you, Elle?
I really like that because my job as a therapist is not, it's different from being a lawyer. It's not to solve their problems for them. It is much more to create a space where they can be empowered to figure out their own solutions.
Yeah.
So it's not about what I think is the right thing to do. It's about what their values and their experiences teach them about what the right path forward is. So I think what you said about wanting to solve problems for people is right on, because I definitely fight with that in a clinical setting. I think that applying that lesson to myself is really valuable too.
Yeah. So I do want to sort of turn here to the future. First, I'm going to start with you, Elle. As you look toward what you're going to do next, what questions do you have about how to step into this next sort of phase of your career?
My curiosity is really around whether or not going back to a private practice is feasible right now or a good idea, or whether I should be looking more in community service kinds of organizations, which is where I primarily have been focusing my search at the moment. My worry with those are that the more sort of bureaucratic an organization is, the less autonomy is going to be a priority for me. And we know that's a big issue. So my worry is that I'm going to chafe in those environments very quickly. At the same time, I feel like it's really important for me to have some stability in terms of scheduling and compensation. The question is, how do I balance my need for security with my need for autonomy?
There you go. Yeah, I mean, you're stepping into an unknown, right? And it's like we know what we want, but then we also have to like negotiate with the world to get it. And I'm curious, Rudhir, what do we need to keep in mind as we step out into, now that we've sort of gained clarity on what is important to us, what do we keep in mind as we go out and try to seek it?
Keeping in mind what's possible, what's ideal, and where do you want to be 5 years from now? Have that picture painted. I think it's nice to think 2-3 steps ahead of us, but what would be the dream practice 5 years from now? What's the environment? Who are the people that you're around? Who are the ideal clients? What is the service you want to be offering? And I think that then dials you in even further to the place that you're looking for. It's hard oftentimes, but I want to project it out. I want to do the strategic thinking that I wish that your last supervisor did for you, which is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? What would be amazing? And opening up the lens to that then allows us to see the next set of steps that might move you in that direction.
I love that. I'm just thinking about 5 years from now, I'll be 50. And so that's a nice round, like, place to be getting started in life, right?
Yes,
so
I agree.
I'll have my independent clinical licensure, so I'll have more career options as far as like roles I can fill. But really on the granular level, I just want to be working with adolescents. I really have a passion for young people, especially young people who are really struggling with issues of where they fit in the world, which is kind of all of them.
Yeah.
I guess that's a pretty common complaint for people between, 13 and 25. But I really have a passion for working with that age group. I'd love to be in a practice that was working with that population, particularly probably queer people, neurodivergent people, certainly. And that's only going to be more important given sort of the climate of the world right now. Yeah. That's kind of where I want to be. So I don't want to stagnate. I want to find something that's going to continue to challenge me.
Well, this feels very helpful, right? This feels very clear.
Yeah.
I think Carvell and I are both very directed, and we have a sense and we have a picture and we have an idea of where you're going, and it fills my heart to hear it. And it also helps you clarify some of your next steps, the type of organization. I hope that children are involved. I hope that you're able to support people in the path that they want to go. But this dialogue, I feel like, really gives some even deeper clarity on the direction that you want to take this search and the place that you're looking for. And I think we can actually see it now.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to really both of you for a very clarifying conversation, because this has been very hard for me to put into words. I feel like I don't want to be boxed in to one kind of practice or one specialty. I want to figure out where my place is, but I don't want to be constrained to it either. There are so many different people who need support, and I have such a varied background. I can provide that to a lot of different people. And I don't even know if social work is the last stop on my professional journey. It might be like law, something I do for 10, 15 years, and then I find a new passion. But I'm very appreciative of the time and the expertise and just the care that you both have had in helping me figure this out.
I love that. I think you certainly have a long arc ahead of you. And when we have a long career, it's just healthy to keep in mind that the person that we were 10, 15, 20 years ago is not who we are today. And there's a lot of value in just continuing to check in with ourselves, continuing to understand what we want right now, because who you are is a different set of values and principles and just a different human than you were when you started your career. And so every so often at these inflection points in a conversation like this and in the search that you're in, just checking in with yourself and your own needs and continue to do that as you progress in your career is going to serve you. And so I just really appreciate you letting us be a part of that journey.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And I'm so happy to hear about the populations you want to work with. I don't want to assume too much, but I want to say I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that people will be very lucky to have your care and work.
Thank you.
Okay, so the thing about where do you see yourself in 5 years is kind of a cliche, but maybe it's a cliche because it works. If you truly use it to be clear about your values and about what is important to you, then the question can be instrumental. It will mean doing a little more defining of your life and a little less reacting to it. And I think that is the key to finding the right fit in all relationships. Big thanks to Elle for sharing her story with us. And thank you to Rudhir Krishtel for all his wisdom and expertise. Do you have a problem that needs solving? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001 and we might have you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, please give us a rating and a review and tell a friend. That helps us help more people. How To is produced by Rosemary Belson with Kevin Bendis and Sara McCrea. Joel Meyer is senior editor and Derek John is executive producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Courtney Martin is my co-host, and I'm Carvell Wallace. Thanks for listening.